The family of the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi held a cleansing ceremony last week to mark the one-year anniversary since his passing. The founder and leader of the Inkatha Freedom Party and traditional Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation died on the 9th of September 2023. Joining us to reflect on his legacy a year on is Professor Musa Xulu, heritage expert and founder of iNdonsa Yesizwe Think Tank. Good evening, Mr. Xulu. Thank you very much for joining us on The Full View this evening. You know, it's hard to believe that it's been a year since the passing of Prince Mangosuthu. Just your reflections a year on just the impact of his absence as a custodian or repository of Zulu heritage.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Fundo, and your viewers all around the country and elsewhere. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi passed on, as you said, last year. It's been a year now. And of course, he passed on at age 95. And he had been in politics for most of his life, remarkably from 1954, where with the opening of the tombstone of King Shaka at Duguza Stenga, in an event which was presided over by the then president of the ANC, Chief Albert Luthuli. And after that, Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi became fully involved with politics in many ways. He had also grown up in the ANC Youth League and had a knowledge of all the founders of the Youth League and was close to Mandela. Tambo was close also to John Dube, was close also to Pixley Sagaseme and others. So he came from a somewhat political background. His grandfather, King Dinuzulu, was very much a traditional leader, but also very close to the formation of the ANC in 1912. So you can imagine, then he came up with this until in 1975, he formed the Inkatha Cultural Liberation Movement first, which was changed in 1991 to Inkatha Freedom Party. And of course, he participated in the first government of national unity as Minister of Home Affairs for 10 years. And then, of course, he has been around. In 2019, he stopped being president of the IFP, but he was a de facto president until he died last year. On the other hand, he had a very strong influence on the issues and matters of the Zulu kingdom, having presided as a traditional prime minister for three kings. Firstly, King Cyprian Zulu, who passed on in 1968, and then King Goodwill Zwelithini, who passed on in 2021, and the present Zulu king, who he almost single-handedly took up to the throne and in 2022,
yes,
resulting in President Ramaphosa signing the certificate for the king. So it was he was a very active man, also active in the church, as well as mixing things in a very beautiful way sometimes between church and education and traditional leadership and politics, democratic politics.
It was quite interesting to witness how he almost merged Christianity with a Zulu tradition in most instances, even with King Misisulu Zwelithini himself. The Bible is never too far from him as well. But just talk us through his absence. Has there really been an impact right now, given what we continue to see play out in the courts insofar as the succession battle is concerned? It started while he was still alive, but it continues. But do you believe that there has been a significant impact where things have worsened since his passing?
Well, he was a voice, a very strong voice in the affairs of the Zulu kingdom, and understanding also that the Zulu kingdom is a sub-national kingdom, which is why he was always in contact with President Ramaphosa on those things. But then you have issues now with the succession battles, which are themselves complicated from time to time. Sometimes there's three sides that are fighting, sometimes there are two, depending on the day and the feeling of the time. He would have been able to settle these matters outside of court. The way I understood him, he would have wanted the sons to the late King Zwelithini to come together and settle their differences outside of the court situation. As you know, when it comes to court, it's always a 50-50 kind of situation, depending on how your lawyers present your case. We have also seen, for example, when the new prime minister came in, there was a little bit of situation of being unsettled in the kingdom. We also saw when the provincial government tried to commemorate the late King Dinuzulu Kacetywayo. That whole process was stopped because there was no much communication between the provincial government, which was trying its best. But of course, then there was some feelings that maybe the current king was shifting towards the IFP, and so there were tensions, which in the weeks leading to the elections of the 29th of May, it was very toxic to be here in KZN.
Mm-hmm. But even just the conversation that sought to diminish the role of the Zulu Prime Minister, or to almost reduce it to something that is almost a role that is insignificant. What are your views on just this role in 2024 now, given the debate by some?
Well, a traditional Prime Minister has always been there. And it's not a government position. It's a position that is in the traditional structure of the Zulu Nation. Ever since, King Shaka, they all had somebody they regarded as a traditional prime minister. And Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi himself, his father and his grandfather, they were all in the same positions in as far as the kingdom is concerned. Now, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa allows for traditional communities to establish themselves, and therefore people may differ in terms of the relevance of the position, but in a democracy, you also cater for diversity. And the Zulus have said that they want a position of a traditional leadership, which is not paid by government. And so it's there, it's democratic in its nature, in its establishment, because it simply means that diversity is being accepted, and that is the success of the constitution that we have today.
Mm-hmm. And then just in closing, how can the Prime Minister now assist with the current impasse? Because you do say ideally this matter should have not found itself in the courts. Many have also, or share your views, that it should have been something that is managed internally by the royal family, but it has found itself in court. What can the Prime Minister now do?
Well, the Prime Minister who is here now has a role to play. If he can be able to call upon members of the Zulu royal family. Unfortunately, he does not have the advantages that Buthelezi had, because Buthelezi was an offspring of the Zulu royal family itself. And so that was the big advantage he had. He was an insider. This new one, Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi, is more or less an outsider. And he therefore has got limited range in terms of the role that he can play outside of advising. But he can still mobilize Amakhosi, for example, and ask for an imbizo of the Zulu Nation to see if the Zulu Nation cannot settle these disputes outside of the court issues. You know that participation in traditional leadership systems is very important. So it will have to open up to inputs from a wide range of Amakhosi, the clergy, academia, etc., and try to see if this thing cannot be settled outside of the courts by, for example, giving out positions to different contestants, so that because sometimes you look at all these contestations, then maybe people are just looking for a position of this and that type.
Mm-hmm. Professor, I wish we had more time just to talk at length about the legacy of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi as we mark 1 year since his passing. But thank you very much for your insights this evening. Professor Musa Xulu, he's heritage expert and founder of iNdonsa Yesizwe Think Tank.